record the meeting if possible. Oh, I see. All right. It has recorded. So we're being recorded. Just keep that in mind. So the agenda, we'll do just some quick introductions. I will give a quick overview of the history and background. And then I've asked David Lapp if he could talk to us about what are the procedural requirements, options for a municipality or other parties if they want to participate with the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting in which they are reviewing the Pepco's proposed tariff revisions, and then we'll just have open question and answer. So I'll start it off. I am Delegate Al Carr. I represent the 18th Legislative District with 9 municipalities. I've been involved in this issue of street lighting for about 20 years, since I was a municipal official in Kensington. And David, why don't you go next? David Lapp.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. David Lapp. I'm People's Counsel. The Office of People's Counsel is the residential consumer advocate for the state. So I'm appointed by the Attorney General, Brian Frosch. I've been People's Counsel for about 1.5 years. So we regularly participate in Public Service Commission, all their activities, including the administrative meetings each week, and we participate in rate cases, working groups, and all the different activities before the Public Service Commission. We're located in Baltimore, just a few floors above the Public Service Commission. We're on the 21st floor at 6 St. Paul. The PSC is on the 16th floor, or they have several floors, but their main offices are on the 16th floor. That's where the administrative meeting will be held. So I'm here to give any guidance that I can offer as far as participating on this Pepco issue.
All right, we have somebody on the phone, 301, and then it ends with a 33. Can you please introduce yourself? David, maybe you can unmute the person that has a phone number 301 and then ending in 33.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. I didn't mute them. They were here when I got here, but I'll try to figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, if you could identify yourself, the person who's in on the phone with the phone number ending in 33. Andy Harney. If you could introduce yourself, Andy. I think you're muted.
Hello.
I'm the village manager of Chevy Chase Section 3, and we're interested in purchasing our own lights.
Ann Vincent.
Out of mute.
Sorry, Bruce Daggy and Ann Vincent were residents of Washington Grove.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Teresa Hessler from Ashlar.
Good morning, everyone. Teresa Hessler with Ashlar Government Relations, here representing Prince George's County Municipal Association. We have 27 municipalities and have been very supportive of Delegate Carr's street lighting legislation in the past, as this is very important to our municipalities.
Thank you so much. Barb Matthews.
Hi, everybody. I'm Barb Matthews. I'm the interim town manager in Garrett Park.
And Barbara, it says R-A-I-M. I can't see the whole name.
Hi, yes, it's Barbara Raimondo. I'm from Washington Grove. I've just been appointed the town council liaison for our lighting committee. I'm glad to be here.
Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you.
And Bob Boer.
Hi, I'm from Washington Grove as well, chair of the HPC and the Sustainability Committee.
All right, Charlie Charlstrom.
I'm Charlie Charleston with the town of Washington Grove, a member of the lighting committee and various other volunteer activities.
Okay, Dan Sinai.
Good morning. I'm Dan Sinai, Montgomery County DOT, Traffic Engineering Division. I've been, excuse me, I've been with the county for about 14 years. I'm responsible for county's lighting program.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And then David Cosson.
You're on mute.
All right, David, can you unmute yourself? I know you're from Washington Grove. All right, well, we'll come back to you. Glen Echo.
Good morning. I'm Beth Stickler. I'm the town manager in the town of Glen Echo.
Welcome, Beth. Shayna Davis.
Hi, good morning all. Shayna Davis, Cook Manager for Chevy Chase Village, and always good to see so many municipal friends and my buddy Charlie Charlstrom.
All right, Sue Ellen Ferguson.
Good morning. I'm Sue Ellen Ferguson. I'm the attorney for Chevy Chase Village and here on their behalf this morning also.
Okay, welcome. And Virginia Quesada.
Hi, Virginia Casada from Washington Grove. I'm the chair of the lighting committee, and we have a lot of folks here interested in this issue.
All right, and David, if you're able to unmute yourself, feel free to introduce yourself at any time. The person who's on the phone, 301 ending in 33. If you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself as you are able. Maybe that's harder to do from the phone, but I'm just going to launch in here.
That person just left.
The person just left. Okay. So just a quick overview. So in 2007, there was legislation passed by the General Assembly that gave municipalities the right to own and maintain their own streetlights. That bill did have a flaw in that it gave the Public Service Commission the ability to mediate in valuation disputes, but the Office of the Attorney General wrote a letter at the time saying that the only way to address valuation disputes is through eminent domain. So that if the utility and a municipality or a county cannot agree on the purchase price for the lights, the way to resolve that is through eminent domain. It would have to go to a court, and a jury would have to decide what is the value of the lights. That is to be compliant with the Maryland Constitution and the U.S. Constitution. So the PSC could resolve any other disputes about the process, but not a dispute about the valuation. So that's the way that bill is able to be constitutional, but we cannot dictate what the lights are worth. That would have to be negotiated or settled in court. So the way we got that bill passed in 2007 is we had a coalition of municipalities from across the state, and by having everyone chime in, we were effective in getting that bill passed over the objections of the utilities. It was actually a Maryland Municipal League priority that year, so we had heavy assistance from MML, and Jane Lawton was the lead sponsor in the House. Rich Madalino was the lead sponsor in the Senate. You can see me. I was a Kensington municipal official at the time. Pete Fossman was the mayor. Carolyn Schauker was the mayor of Garrett Park. And everyone knows why we needed a bill. There was a lot of dissatisfaction about the wood pole lights that are owned by the utilities, with the inflexibility and the high cost that were making it difficult for municipalities to get energy efficient lights that looked good. And when we saw what other states were doing, we tried to follow their lead and got that bill passed. So since the bill passed, there's only one municipality that was able to acquire their lights. That's Poolsville. They are in the Potomac Edison region, not in the Pepco region. And these were the metal pole lights that are typically already owned by local governments. All of the other purchase attempts did not move forward. We have an unwilling seller. The utilities do not want to sell their lights, and they have all kinds of ways to obstruct the process. Typically, things grind to a halt when the conversation turns to what are the lights worth? There are other stumbling blocks that are thrown in the way, like, oh, sure, you can buy your lights, but you're going to have to pay us money so we can hire a consultant to tell us where the lights are and what condition they're in, to do an inventory. So it's just obstructionism. And there was in 2011, the PSC did approve Pepco's conversion, mercury vapor to high pressure sodium. I think when local governments started to realize that was not a good deal financially, the ones that were able to told Pepco to cease and desist and not do that conversion, because that was a not financially a good deal for local governments. The Montgomery County government was able to win concessions in 2012 to improve the tariff for the metal pole lights. Those are the, that have underground wires. And since then, Montgomery County has been very successful in upgrading those metal pole lights that they already own to LED. I think Gaithersburg has followed suit with the same contract. Just regarding LED conversions overall, BG&E has done pretty well with that. Pepco has not. Only about 4% of the Pepco-owned lights on the wood poles have been converted to LED. There was a Public Service Commission proceeding in 2020 to just convert everything to LED smart lights. That got rejected by the PSC due to municipal concerns. And the Maryland Energy Administration did issue a report also in 2020 recommending transitioning to municipal ownership as a best practice. And they gave a lot of examples from other states where this is working really well. And I had a bill in 2020 as well that didn't advance, I think, under the argument that Pepco made is, oh, we're about to make a rate filing to do an LED conversion. So after the PSC rejected Pepco's proposal, case 9655, Susan Lee and I, Senator in District 16, introduced a bill, House Bill 1083, that was heard in the 2022 session. It did not advance for a couple reasons. Number one, in the Senate, we were sent unexpectedly to a different committee. For 20 years, a certain Senate committee had heard all those bills, and this year they sent it to a different Senate committee. So that committee was hearing it for the very first time. And in the House committee was consumed with two other very, very large bills, and we had a new committee chairman. So they didn't really have the bandwidth to deal with this issue, but I've been reassured by the House committee chairman that the prospects for this bill would be very good in 2023 if it were to be reintroduced. So there are about 66,000 streetlights in Pepco land that are owned by Pepco. Most are high pressure sodium, some are mercury vapor, a few are incandescent. Tacoma Park, I think through the efforts of Daryl Braithwaite, was successfully able to work with Pepco to upgrade their lights to LED using M-Power funding. It ended up being a good deal, but other municipalities, when like Rockville asked for the same deal and they were told, no, you can't have that same deal that we gave to Tacoma Park. So this was sort of a one-off solution. It's not systemic enough to help the entire Montgomery and Prince George's County Pepco region. There are a lot of issues with Pepco's management of the lights that they owned. The billing system appears to be broken. You know, you have Prince George's County government that's ordered hundreds of lights over the last 5 years, and they don't show up in the invoice. So something is broken there. Same thing in Gaithersburg, same thing in Montgomery County. So a lot of difficulties. And then there on Pepco's website, there's an outage reporting system, and it's broken. As you know, this is election season, so I'm going around canvassing, and when I see a light that's on during the day, I report it as a day burner, or one that's burned out and not working at night, I'll report it. But a pretty high percentage of those lights, you can't report them because they're missing from Pepco's map. You know, you try to punch in the poll number, it says not found, or the address not found. And so I've been putting those on Twitter just to let Pepco and the Public Service Commission know, you know, all is not well. But we did get some pretty broad support for the bill this year, which I think is a really good indication of our prospects going forward. So where do we go from here? We have on April 8th, Pepco did file a proposed tariff revision for overhead street lighting. That's MD-SSL-OH. Those are for the older types of lights, and MD-SSL-OH LED. Those are for the LED lights. And Pepco had promised to the Public Service Commission and to the General Assembly that they would make their tariff compliant with the 2007 law for the very first time, which would mean that it would facilitate customer ownership of the lights. So the way this normally works is when the local government owns the lights, they only pay for the electricity. They don't pay any maintenance charges to Pepco. There's a clear demarcation of where Pepco's network ends and where the locally owned streetlight begins. That's how it works in Pepco's Washington, D.C. territory in the mid-'80s. In a rate case settlement agreement, Washington, D.C. was able to negotiate ownership of all of the streetlights from Pepco. And so they have a good system there. They only pay for the energy. They have complete flexibility to put in whatever types of lights that they want. And they just tell Pepco every month, you know, here's how many lights we have, here's how much energy each light consumes, and then Pepco just bills them for, you know, the kilowatt hours. That's what we want. That's what we need in Maryland. We want complete flexibility to put in whatever type, whatever wattage, whatever style. We want complete flexibility to for the energy consumption. If we have lights that can dim, we want that. If we want lights that are, you know, turn off from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., we want that. And so this is our opportunity really to work with the Public Service Commission to get a really strong and good tariff similar to what exists in other states. And then I think the legislation becomes much simpler if we have to come back next year, because then we only have to focus on the valuation issue, and we don't have to include in the legislation a requirement that there needs to be a strong tariff. So at this point, I will turn it over to David Lapp to give us some information about how the administrative meeting process works. What are the options for parties who want to participate? What are the different directions a matter like this could go in? And I see Shayna has raised her hand. Go, Shayna, do you have a question at this point before we go into Q&A after David Lapp presents?
Sorry, actually, I have just a question about the current status of things, since that's what you were just providing an overview of, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So in this meeting, we have a lot of the smaller municipalities. I was just wondering, what is the current state in Rockville and Gaithersburg? Are they in the same boat as us, or are they positioned differently in regard to ownership or control or maintenance of their streetlights?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And they're not on this call to represent themselves, but they did strongly support the legislation in the 2022 legislative session. So they have expressed to the General Assembly their support for the option of owning their lights. They did participate in case 9655, and they did express all the concerns about, the problems with Pepco's billing system and invoices. And I know that Rockville was very frustrated that they were not able to get a deal like Tacoma Park got to be able to upgrade to LED. So that is all I know. I would think that it would be in their interest to have a very good tariff and have the option to own their lights if the economics make sense.
So Pepco definitely owns all of the lights in both of those jurisdictions. And do we know if any are LED? I see Virginia's shaking her head that no, they don't own.
So in Gaithersburg, they have a pretty high percentage of the metal pole lights that they already own, and they have a smaller proportion of the wood pole lights that Pepco owns. In Rockville, it's the opposite. Most of their lights are wood pole lights owned by Pepco, and they have a smaller number of metal pole lights that they can already convert to LED. And then for the Pepco owned lights, I think Rockville and Gaithersburg both have a small number of LED lights.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I think it's helpful for all of us strategically if we can work with those large municipalities to really bring them in on this case. I think it will be helpful for the rest of us. So that's why I wanted to just get an understanding if you're aligned with us.
And to the extent that you have a relationship with, Monique or others in Rockville, Gaithersburg, perhaps you can reach out to them and, sort of convey where we are, through the MML chapter.
Yep, can do. And for Tacoma Park, although yes, they've converted to LED, do we know if they have any interest in actually taking ownership of their lights, or are they pretty satisfied at this point?
I don't know. I have not spoken to Daryl Braithwaite about this. I would think it's in their interest to have the option to purchase their lights at some point. Those lights have been in place for at least a couple years, so they're depreciating. And, there are a lot of benefits to just being free of the tariff, the current regime, and to future rate increases. Because even though they do have LED, Pepco still owns the lights, so they're exposed to future rate increases, and they can't take advantage of things like dimming and part night lighting that they might be able to do if they own their lights. So that's a really good question.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So David Lapp, I will turn it over to you to give us some information about the Public Service Commission and the process.
Sure. And thank you, Delegate Carr, for the overview. That was interesting for me. I knew some of that, but not all of it. I think that Delegate Carr, maybe you can correct me, but there was a letter filed, or comments have been filed with the Public Service Commission, or at least on behalf of a group of legislators and
Correct.
County members.
I wrote a letter, and I have about 36 state legislators representing Prince George's and Montgomery counties, and about 10 county council members from Prince George's and Montgomery County who have signed on to that. So that is filed with the Public Service Commission. So they have it, and I think Washington Grove has also submitted a letter, which is now visible on the PSC's website.
Okay, so there are two different sets of comments. So this is on the draft agenda for next Wednesday. I assume it'll be on the final agenda because I think it's been pushed back a couple times. But the final agenda for next Wednesday's meeting should come out this afternoon. And only until that final agenda is released by the commission on its website will you know for sure that this will be on next Wednesday's agenda. It's not uncommon for things to be pushed back, further. This may not be because it's already been pushed back a couple times, but you won't know until the final agenda comes out this afternoon.
We actually already got confirmation from the PSC staff that it has been moved to June 15th.
Okay, there you go. So it's already been moved. Okay. It's still on the draft for next Wednesday, but I'm not surprised. That is not uncommon for them to move the date. So that means that anybody who wishes to be heard at that meeting on June 15 will need to be to have filed written comments with the Public Service Commission, and that those would be due by Monday, the prior Monday, that would be June 13 by noon. So the comments that the legislators have filed, that would qualify. So there would be, somebody could speak on behalf of that group. And if Washington Grove has submitted comments as well, then Washington Grove would be there and be capable of being heard at that June 15th meeting. If anybody else wants to be heard, they should file comments by noon the Monday before, by noon June 12th, assuming that it doesn't get pushed back again. But that's the deadline, and the commission is not likely to want to entertain anybody speaking at the June 15th hearing that hasn't submitted written comments. That would be the first thing to keep in mind. And where there are joint comments, the commission isn't going to want to hear from all. I don't know how many people you had on your letter, Delegate Carr, but they're not going to want to hear from 40 different people saying the same thing. So they're going to want to hear from someone representing that group or maybe a couple people. So the hearings are held on the 16th floor at 6 St. Paul. That's the main at the main hearing room. It's a relatively small hearing room, sort of gallery style hearing room seating. If you come in that day, you should be able to get permission at the front desk downstairs to come up to the 16th floor. They'll point you in the direction of the hearing room. There's two podiums, one as you face the commissioners, they're up there like a panel of judges. And as you face them, there's a podium on the left and a podium on the right. You all would be talking from the podium on the right. And so probably, seating on the right side of the room as you face the commission to the commissioner's left would be probably the easiest place to sit. And then there'll be a number of items on the agenda that day. And so when this item comes up, then they'll ask for people to speak. So they'll be given, staff will have an opportunity, the PSC technical staff, the utility Pepco will be given an opportunity, and then anyone who has filed comments. And so they'll just call you up, and you just need to be ready to stand up and go to that podium. And there could be, you wouldn't want to have a whole bunch of people, but you could have a couple people represent you. Yeah, the hearing starts at 10. They always start at 10 a.m. They're usually less than an hour, but sometimes with controversial issues, if there are on the agenda controversial issues, they've lasted a couple hours. This one would probably qualify as a controversial issue. How long they spend on it, who knows? And whether it comes first or last on the agenda, it just depends on when they call it. So after someone from staff speaks, someone from the utility will speak, and then anybody who has filed written comments can speak. And then usually the commissioners will have questions. Some commissioners will have questions, some won't. And they'll just take turns, and, one commissioner might have a question for Pepco, for staff, and for Al Carr, or somebody else. And then, so you're sort of standing there and you're ready to answer whenever a question is directed at you. And then they'll go to the next commissioner. I see questions popping up. I will, let me just go through the rest of the process, and then I'll try and catch the questions in the chat. So after they go through all the questions, then the commission will, there'll be a motion from the bench. You'll probably get a sense even before there's a motion from the chair, generally from the chair, to approve, deny, approve with modifications, what Pepco has proposed, the tariff. They could also decide to put it off and or ask for supplemental comments. So, I mean, your request could be just to deny it, to approve it with modifications, or to say, we need more time. And we want to file written comments. Or the commission might say, well, this group of municipalities in Pepco, you should go talk. You should go talk more, and we'll put this off for a few more weeks, and you come back and report to us if you've made any, had any progress in your conversations. Those are the main things to keep in mind. I mean, they'll hear from lawyers and non-lawyers. If you do have a lawyer, the lawyer could do the presenting, and then have other folks available to answer any questions. There's a fair amount of flexibility. Let me see if I can pull up I saw some questions showing up here. Just a second.
Sue Ellen asked, what are the requirements for formally filing comments and for receiving data requests and Pepco responses?
So because it's been delayed, you can submit data requests to Pepco, and they generally have to turn those around in 5 days. So there is time now, if with the hearing being pushed back to June 15th. So you would serve those, on Pepco. And
What about, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but a number of the municipalities may not have that ability to get that in there right now or know exactly what to ask. We do know that staff has requested information and Pepco's had to answer, and they may follow up with other data requests. How do we get copies of the data requests made by others and the responses?
You would ask either staff or Pepco directly for what those are, for copies of those.
So they don't become part of the record?
They don't become part of the official record. They're not filed with the commission.
Okay, and my other question goes to.
So if you would want those to be part of the record that goes before the commission, you could say attach them to your own comments.
Oh,
and
okay.
And
Okay,
sorry.
and then, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm done. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
And the other question is, we were in a number of municipalities appeared in the rate case and understood what the filing requirements for that are. This is a little different. How do you, when you say you file your comments, do they go to Mr. Johnston? Do you have to copy them to other people? how's that go?
So I
Yes.
was told that that was a privilege extended to legislators to be able to email your comments to Mr. Johnston, but that maybe that might not be extended to others.
What routinely happens is that you put a cover on the letter to Mr. Johnston, but you also upload it through their filing system.
Yes.
Is that sufficient to make you a party of record then? You just have to upload it? And to whom, where do you find your copy list as to who else has to get a copy?
The service list,
Mhm.
you should serve staff, the utility, our office, the Office of People's Counsel. And unless they open a docket, that should be all you need to do.
Okay. Thank you.
So
And,
my question, go ahead, Susan.
Just since I asked several in a row, I'll just get rid of it. How important, we talked to staff last week, how important, and they mentioned talking to Pepco, how important is it, in your opinion, to talk to Pepco beforehand about the issues that municipalities are seeing?
I mean, it's not critical. I mean, especially I think with something like this, where this has been sort of publicly debated for some time. So is Pepco, you can tell me, is Pepco going to be surprised? I would guess not. Our office regularly just, files comments, utility files something, that's put on the administrative agenda. We may do some discovery requests. We get those back and we file comments. So there's no obligation to negotiate in advance. It is possible that the commission could say, well, have you talked about this? And to the extent that you have, that could be, it could be helpful to say, yeah, we've talked about it and we haven't, Pepco hasn't responded, or we've sort of reached an impasse. That could be helpful, because if the commission, sort of asks that question or senses that there may be room for negotiation and resolution, the commission could say, well, we're not going to decide this issue now. We think you should all go talk. But if it's clear that there is not going to be a resolution, I think you could make.
Can I call you back?
You can make that clear to the commission, that these have been issues that have been back and forth with Pepco for quite some time, and we need the commission to make a decision.
Thank you. I'll have questions to follow up, but I'll let other people ask.
I can tell you that my sense of the commission is, if they can avoid it, if they can avoid making a decision, where there's a controversy, they will. If it would be useful to be clear with the commission, that you don't think that, Pepco is talking in good faith, if that's the case, or, we've been trying for years to resolve these issues with Pepco. It'd be useful to be able to say that if that's the case.
So obviously we want to try to persuade the commission members, but we also want to persuade the staff. So how far in advance are the staff sort of forming their opinions or making their recommendations? If the meeting's on June 15th, how far in advance should we get anything submitted so that we can influence the staff and have that incorporated into their thinking?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I meant to mention actually that, so if this is pushed back to June 15th, then around June 9th, when the final agenda is published, which should be June 9th, there will, at that time, when they post the final agenda, there'll be what's called a buck sheet, which is the technical staff's comments on Pepco's proposal. So those are often useful. So if anybody wants to file comments, they could, they could be thinking about what their comments are, but they could and have an idea. But then the staff's technical comments may provide some more insights, or in terms of substance or strategy that you would want to look at. And then before you file your comments by the Monday deadline. So there's a couple days, there's the weekend, Friday, the weekend, and Monday until noon, where you would have the staff's buck sheet. And they're available. They will be available in the same web posting where the final agenda is posted. There's a place there. You can look at an old final agenda and you can see staff comments. And so you can take a look at those.
So Andy, you had a couple of questions in the chat. Do you want to just say those?
Oh, I have to look at them all. Sorry.
Here, your first question was, you don't read your comments, but rather give a summary, or do they expect you to read your comments you've already sent in? Is there a time limit on speakers?
Good questions. I would not read your comments. I would summarize the key points. You may also, if the utility goes first, you could also use your time to respond to what the utility said. So I would stick with the high points. They likely, most of them will likely have read the written comments. So there's no, there wouldn't be a need to sort of read through them, and that would not. I don't think they would appreciate just reading through your written comments. So
I didn't know whether you had to put it on the record.
No, they're automatically part of the file. The commissioners will get those before.
And then why would they open a docket? You referenced in just now, you said if they opened a docket. Why would they open a docket?
Well, in some cases, I mean, these aren't full. When items are put on the administrative agenda, they're not full-blown evidentiary cases. So if there's a factual element, like in a rate case, there's all kinds of factual issues, and they'll send that to a public utility law judge generally in most cases. And then, for a full-blown evidentiary hearing, a proposed decision, and then the proposed decision is either adopted or modified or rejected completely by the full commission later. And so if they would decide that there, was some much bigger factual dispute that, could not be heard on the administrative agenda, they could open a full doc.
All right. So Gary Crockett had a question. Do we know exactly what constitutes talking to Pepco?
Well, I think that the question earlier was, should we talk to Pepco? And that could happen, in any capacity. I mean, in some respects, you may be able to say you've already been talking to Pepco for years about these issues, if that's the case. So there's no format. I mean, if the commission sensed that they're, after hearing from Pepco, after hearing from you all, the commission thought, oh, it sounds like there's some room for, negotiation or resolution, and then we don't have to make a decision. They might, say, go talk about this issue, or, a particular.
Well, to clarify my question, I think maybe Shana Davis Cook answered it. In other words, I could call Pepco's outage line. Who is it at Pepco that is our contact?
Yeah, I don't. That would probably not really be talking to Pepco. You want to talk to somebody.
Yeah, but who?
Mr. Ellis.
Okay.
It's not. There was a woman, I think, who worked for Mr. Ellis. Is she no longer the contact?
So Tammy Watkins had been our contact, and this Mr. Ellis is who she's identified as being her replacement.
Oh,
That's only been, within the last, she retired in April, so that's only been within the last, little over a month. And I have personally not had any contact with Mr. Ellis. I don't even know if he's up to speed on these larger issues or if he's just more involved in the day-to-day municipal issues that arise.
I suspect he's aware, and I deal with Katie Lanzarata. She is the state legislative liaison, and I try to keep in communication with her. And she was, she testified on the bills, and I think they work for the same person. So I suspect that he is aware of these concerns. So David, you had raised your hand.
Yes, thank you. And I finally figured out how to unmute. So, I'm Dave Costin. I'm a town councilor in Washington Grove and a member of the lighting committee. The overall concern in our comments is you can't read the tariff and figure out what it's going to cost. And I guess my background is in communications regulation, not electricity, and no experience with Maryland, but on federal level and in many of the states I've worked, with very strict regulations saying tariffs have to show dollars and cents of what it costs, and they have to be specific, and that any ambiguity is construed against the filer. How much precedent in that line is there before the Maryland PSC? How hard can we push on the fact that they're offering services, but you can't tell what the price is?
I mean, I would think that should be a pretty compelling argument. If you're the customer and you cannot interpret the tariff or make sense of what you would have to pay, I would think that would be a very important thing for the PSC to know about.
I wonder if David, can you give us any precedents in PSC or decisions or appeals thereof that focus on this ambiguous tariff question?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, I would say that, as a matter of regulatory law, you're correct. I mean, you should be able to read the tariff and know what it costs. I'm not, I haven't reviewed the Pepco street lighting tariff, so I can't speak to that specifically. Tariffs do cover services. I mean, a tariff can cover many different things, and often, most often it's probably the price and the cost, but they do lay out, all kinds of things that are, requirements, and the utilities always have to comply with those filed tariffs. And so if a tariff is ambiguous and you can't tell, that's certainly a very valid argument to raise, and I would raise it. I don't, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of Maryland case law on the specificity of a tariff. I'm not saying there may be, but that's not anything that we've litigated in the recent past. But certainly is an issue to raise.
Okay, well, sir, and I think our comments do focus on that as well as the and in particular, I guess, on the ambiguity of fair market value.
Mm-hmm.
No process for doing that, and no defined, no obvious example market for in-place use streetlights.
Yeah, there is no market for a used street light. So yeah, that term fair market value, it refers to the current law. it says that, a municipality would pay fair market value, but fair market value is not defined. And then you have the OAG letter that says, the PSC can't determine the value, that would have to go to eminent domain. So this may be sort of a bad faith attempt by Pepco to insert that language into the tariff, because that language kind of can cause chaos. And maybe it's better left out of the tariff.
Al, that's one of the questions that I have. I have my hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry, Sue Ellen, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes. What we have been paring down the issues that we would like to talk about to the commission. And this is an important one about whether or not fair market value should be attempted in, or should be in this tariff. And based on your history of what you said today, apparently that is something they will not take up. And in fact, we should address that in a different way, because they're putting fair market value language in there and with no definition of what it is. And so that may be dangerous for consumers, for the municipalities. Should we in fact be saying to them, the AG has already said it has to be by condemnation. We think it should be in state legislation that will be coming up next year. It should not be referenced in this tariff, because you've already been told you can't do anything about this particular issue.
My opinion is that, there should not be a mention of fair market value or the valuation of the lights in the tariff for all those reasons that you mentioned. And really the only way to address that, I think, is through legislation. In the legislation that we had put in this year, 2022, it gave, we sort of switched from the term fair market value to the term net book value, which is a more accurate description. And we define what net book value means. And then we say that in an eminent domain proceeding, a jury would consider the net book value. So that's the proper way to address the valuation disputes, not in the tariff, in my opinion. And, David may have some thoughts on that as well.
What the main issue, of course, is a small town can't afford to go to a jury trial. And
Pepco knows that.
Right.
Right. Does Mr. Lapp have anything to say about that?
I'm gonna defer on this question because I haven't looked at it, and while we're very supportive of what you're doing, or I am. It's that this isn't an issue that our office, because our mandate is specific to residential customers. We've had this sort of, we've been happy to provide some guidance on participation at the PSC and been in touch with Delegate Carr. But we don't want to, go out on a limb. We're already in numerous battles with the utilities, and we don't want them coming to say, well, you shouldn't. Why are you even involved in this street lighting issue? The customers are municipalities and not residential customers. So I'm sorry about that, but that's sort of what we've decided internally to, avoid.
I think one of the ways that you could be helpful today in terms of your input, not to take a side, but to tell us what kinds of issues it's appropriate to bring up. We understand this is an administrative hearing, not a full case. If some of the issues really should go along with this and we need to ask for a full case, then we might be willing to do that. And the issues that we're looking at are the pole attachment agreement. Whether or not this maintenance ability given to the municipalities, if they do acquire their lights, is not real because we can't work in that space on the pole. There's also the types of lights that can be purchased and the voltage and the lumens, the wattage. So are those all the kinds of issues that we should be presenting if we have concerns about them to the commission as part of this?
I would suggest that you raise them. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a quick time check. It's 10:27. I had advertised this meeting as ending at 10:30. I can stay longer, if we have more Q&A, but we'll just continue through the questions. And I know Mr. Lapp probably has a lot of other things that
I do have a 10:30, so I only have a couple minutes.
Can we send you questions in writing, Mr. Lapp,
Sure.
if
Absolutely.
we have additional questions that we weren't able to cover on the call?
Absolutely.
And thank you again for your office. Anna Ryan in particular, who's no longer with your office, was incredibly helpful to the municipalities in the case 9655. So thank you very much, not just for today and all the other times that you've been available to provide guidance, but also in case 9655 for Anna Ryan.
Okay, well, good luck, and yeah, feel free to reach out with anything else. I'm gonna sign off.
All right, thank you. And you said, Andy asked, how do we access the technical staff comments? It sounds like we just have to email staff and say, can you please send us, any copies of any correspondence you've had with Pepco, or
yes,
you said the butt sheet will be posted once we get closer to the meeting date.
Right. And if you don't have contacts there, just let me know. I can send you some people you could email to ask for those, but they should be happy to give those to you there. I mean, if there's, assuming, I don't know if there's any confidentiality claims that Pepco is asserting, you might have to deal with those, but hopefully not. I mean, if a tariff is a public document, so they should be able to.
Yeah.
Sometimes
there's any Homeland Security matters here involved.
Yeah.
So.
Sometimes they can be pretty overbroad with their confidentiality claims, but okay. Good luck.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yep. And have a good day.
Thanks. All right. I'm going to stay on, to the extent that people want to continue talking. I know, Virginia, you had asked how critical is attendance at the meeting. I guess that's sort of a question for David Lapp, and he's dropped off. Beth, you had said Alberto Zagata has been your contact, so I don't know if he works for Mr. Ellis or not. That's kind of a question. Do we know for a fact whether staff has sent data requests for Pepco? I mean, okay, Shana answered me. PSC staff has shared with us some of Pepco's responses. If you could share those to the group, Shana, that would be really great. Dan Sinai, are you still on? I'm curious whether
yes,
Montgomery County has any opinions about this matter. If you all, I know my initial question to Lisa Brennan, who is in the county attorney's office, had indicated that the county was not intending to participate on this. Is there any new information in that regard regarding what the county's opinion is of this tariff revision, and whether you all are going to file any comments?
So I based on the discussion we've had so far, it appears we are not going to formally file any comments. We have reached out through Lisa to the staff and made a couple of points. For example, and I think Andy has I kind of looked at Andy's comments, and thank you for that opportunity, Andy. So one of the things we have in common that I saw was kayak, for example, for LED. it would be helpful to us. We do, of course, we have over 28,000 Pepco lights within Montgomery County. And so for the last 3 or 4 years, and that inventory continues to expand. And every time we ask Pepco to install a new light for us, it's LED, but we don't know exactly how much it would cost ahead of time. It would be helpful for us to budget for that. When you are installing, let's say, 10, 20, 30 lights, it would be helpful to know, okay, how much it's going to cost you. And so for HPS, we finally, after years, convinced them to come up with a kayak. And so we know how much
standard dollar amount so that you can have
exactly
predictability.
Exactly. So this,
for those who don't know, kayak is construction in aid of contribution in aid of construction.
Thank you, Andy. Yes. And so so for us, we kind of have a ballpark estimate, but really, if you have that number, then so you ask me, let's say management comes to me and says, hey, how much this project is going to cost and what your plans are. I can't kind of definitely answer that question because I don't have that number. So it would be good to have that information. We've been able to work around it with Pepco. They told us it would take about 3 years of data to be able to come up with that number, and it's been more than 3 years. So more than 3 years since they started installing LED, I should say. So they should have enough data to come up with that number. So that's one thing. And the other thing was, right now, if for any municipalities or county to purchase the lights, there is no maintenance, there is no rate for customer supplied maintenance of that light on their pole. They would still continue to own and maintain the pole. They would own and maintain the secondary lines that feed the light. But there is, so right now it's not an issue for Montgomery County per se because they still own and maintain the lights. But if we were to, let's say, or anybody else, to purchase and maintain the lights, there is no tariff for that. So they would have to work on that structure as well.
So you're talking about for LED?
And HPS, they have that. For LED, it's not there.
So for example, if Tacoma Park wanted, or Martin's Additions wanted to acquire their LED lights, the tariff must be updated to account for customer-owned lights because it currently does not even provide for that. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah, they need to. And by the way, I've noticed my camera is not working, and I apologize. It's not that I don't want to show myself. It's just my camera is not working. I don't know why not, but so yeah, those are.
We know what you look like, Dan, or I do anyway.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. Maybe it's a good thing.
I'm a little confused here, Dan. I don't understand. If they're maintaining the lines that service all of our residents, why would we pay them more money to maintain anything else?
So,
instead of just electrical distribution only.
And that's a good question. So they, so let's say I go to them and ask them to install a light on a pole. So if there are no lines, no secondary lines for other lights that we have, let's say along that stretch, then I have to pay them to install that secondary for that light, even if it's just one light.
And that's a one-time charge you're talking about?
Yes, it's a one-time charge, and then they have to obviously maintain that. So they maintain that secondary light to the point of connection. Let's say if I were to purchase the light to the point of connection with that arm which supports the fixture.
So if instead of a vague reference to make ready, they gave you a catalog of charges in the tariff of what that would be a quote, make ready charge, would it not?
Well, yeah, and that's a good question too. Like, for example, when you look at what they have right now for HPS, make ready. So that's exactly that's what they are referring to. Because they have to bring lines in, and then so there is a kayak to install the light. It's like $13.50 right now for HPS, $13.48 or something. And then there is a second charge, and that's what it is for, make ready. So if that secondary line is not there, they have to install it to be able to energize.
But could they not then catalog the standard make ready charges so that there would be some predictability for counties and municipalities? I mean, having it vague.
And that's a good question. So when we ask them, that's a great question. When we ask for a new light, they have to verify whether or not that secondary line is there already. If it's not there, then they come back and say, okay, so they give us a breakdown. How much for this? You know, so much for this, so much for that.
But why couldn't that be in the tariff so we would all be able to plan and understand what are the possible charges?
That's.
I mean, make ready, their example of make ready in a response to a DR was, well, we might have to reconstruct a pole, or we might have to fix a bracket arm.
Oh, okay. Well,
so I mean, lame is not the word I would use to describe.
Yeah, and in that case, if they gave you that kind of explanation, I would not be happy. My understanding of make ready is basically what I just described. That's what I understand.
So there's only, so how many instances could there be?
So
that couldn't be enumerated, I mean.
So for most of the lights, most of the cases where we ask to install a new light, the secondary is already there, so we don't have to pay for that. But
so
when
the
it's
secondary
not
isn't there, instead of saying a vague term like make ready, make ready, and make ready means
right
X equals dollar amount, Y situation equals dollar amount, and
and seldom they come. I want to say less than 5% of the times. Certainly no more than 10 for sure. We see excessive charges, and the red flag goes up, and so we want to know why it's costing so much for a particular light. And then they come back and they explain to us, for example, certain parts of the county. Let's say, for example, in Bethesda, depending on the location, and they have to maintain traffic, and it's excessive, it's different. So they can, there may be additional charges, but that's on a case by case. Otherwise, you're just paying. If you ask for a new light and it's HPS, it's just that kayak. So we are asking for similar kayak for LED. We have an idea how much it would cost, but it would be nice to know exactly what that charge is.
Did you also reference the maintenance charge, so the O&M charge that they have listed?
Yes. So that is when, let's say, like I was saying, if Montgomery County decides to purchase the lights and maintain the lights, well, let's say we would convert it to LED on our own, and then they would, so we would own and maintain the light, but they would still have to maintain, obviously it would be on their pole, and they would still maintain that secondary line. And so we don't know how much it would cost for them to maintain whatever they are maintaining when we own and maintain the light on their pole. And so it would, as O&M for customer supply maintenance.
We understood that that was supposed to be part of the distribution charge. No?
Yeah, that should be zero. That's how it works in Pepco's Washington DC service territory.
I think that's what staff said too. Shana, do you recall that? I think they said that if you own and maintain your own lights, then the only charge you should be looking at is the SL schedule, which is the distribution fee.
That is correct. That is what the PSC staff explained to us.
Good. They've been hearing us. I know Gary and David had their hands up.
Yeah.
Gary Crockett and then David.
I just had, I think the fellow who's gone was the right one to answer this question. But as David Cawson said earlier, the big elephant in the room here is how much does it, what is the price for the light that they're selling to us? And my only thought about how to address that in front of the commission, if I were testifying today, was something along the lines of, for a regulated utility of this sort, I think we can all agree that that transferring the ownership of the light to the municipality should not result in a financial windfall for Pepco, nor should it amount to a undue economic burden on Pepco. And that the obvious way to achieve that, since Pepco already has got they already have booked a cost that they incurred in creating that light in the first place, and they have on their books how much depreciation they have recognized over the years, that the net book value as in the proposed legislation is the obvious way to do that. And that so you make an argument along those lines, and my question is that a completely non sequitur thing to be doing at this point? Is if we said to the PSC, you really need to, instead of this fair market value nonsense, it really has to be based on Pepco's actual costs as reflected in their book value. Is that something the PSC can even do or would be willing to do, or is it just a waste of breath to make that argument?
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that we should be asking the PSC to not include in the tariff, references to the valuation or the fair market value, because the OAG says the only way to resolve the valuation is through, when there's a disagreement, is through eminent domain. I mean, it wouldn't hurt to make the PSC aware that there are valuation disputes, but that the tariff is not the place to address them. What we really need out of the tariff.
I mean, they have the whole point here is that is the question that needs to be addressed for us to make a decision about whether we want to buy the lights or not.
Well, there are multiple questions. First of all, the tariff has to be suitable for customer-owned lights. It's currently not, because it has this phantom maintenance charge that Pepco wants to include. It should be zero, and there are these other things that they want to throw in there, like make ready work. We want the tariff to be very suitable for customer-owned lights, and no surprises, no opportunities for additional foot dragging or costs.
But if there are to be no surprises, there has to be a formula for their coming up with a price for these things. If there are to be no surprises,
the PSC is not able to resolve a dispute over the valuation.
Okay,
that's the OAG says the only way to resolve that is through a court, through an eminent domain proceeding, and so that's a topic for legislation. It really can't be addressed in the tariff or by the Public Service Commission. And I think by Pepco sticking in that language, fair market value, that may be sort of a bad faith attempt to kind of muddy the waters.
I would suggest too that for those of you who haven't seen, what's her name? Kate Lanzarato? Is that the name?
Katie Lanzarato,
Katie,
yeah.
if you take a look at her testimony before the legislature, which the commissioners haven't been face to face with, about their and Pepco's interpretation of fair market value, which is that they should be reimbursed for their lost revenues. I mean, it's a way out there definition. I mean, Black's law definition is one thing.
Yeah.
And her definition in her testimony is worth highlighting because it shows you how unabashedly greedy they are in their interpretation of fair market value.
And fair market value is a term that really applies to real property. When you have a willing seller and a willing buyer in an open market,
Yeah,
streetlights they're not real property. They're personal property, and there's only one buyer. Ocean City does not want to buy the lights in Rockville, and the utility is not a willing seller. So fair market value is not really a good term to use in general. So in any case, but we do want to address the issues we can address. There is a lot we can address in this tariff, and hopefully the only remaining issue would just be the valuation, which can be addressed in the legislation next year. David, you had your hand up.
Yes, back on the elephant in the room. A couple of observations. Of course, the comment on jury trial eminent domain, for net book value, which should probably be modified as plus any net salvage. Okay? And we suggest in our comments that net salvage is likely to be a negative number. But in the first instance, that should just be produced by Pepco's green eye shade guys. Now, you obviously have disputes as to whether they did their accounting right, but that might be a close enough number. I'm not sure that I agree the PSC can't, at least in the first instance, make a decision, because the confiscation issue, of course, arises every time they set rates for service, for telephone, electric, or whatever they set rates for. The ultimate response of the utility is always, you're not allowing us a fair return on our investment or recover our expenses, and that violates the Fifth Amendment. And of course, the complication from the little research I've done on the Maryland law, the Maryland Constitution is kind of a mess on when you find a provision that says part of the constitutional requirements for just compensation dealing with off-street parking in Baltimore. That's just, that shouldn't be a constitutional provision that you have to deal with. But and you're right, most of the cases deal with real estate. But I guess that leads to, is there some way to push back on the AG on to say, in these circumstances, the PSC can at least prescribe a tariff provision and let Pepco take the PSC to court, because our real problem is affordability, and let the PSC lawyers defend it.
Yeah, I think that, the PSC could require the Pepco to provide the net book value, without, stating that that's the purchase price. If the PSC were to say that upon request, Pepco must provide, an accurate inventory of the lights and the net book value of the lights, either based on the specific equipment or an average of their base, that's something that PSC could do. But I don't think it would make sense to kind of get into a to relitigate the OAG's opinion about what can and cannot. How do you resolve a valuation dispute? Shayna, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something and then ask for clarification. So when we were talking before about the maintenance of the street lights, and as Sue Ellen was outlining from our conversation with the PSC staff, they've stated that if the municipality owns and maintains the street lights, we do not have to pay an O&M to Pepco. However, what we are still waiting for clarification about is whether truly the municipality can maintain the street light if we own it. There's actually a question that came up in our conversation with PSC staff as to whether or not we can even maintain, because the street light falls within so many feet of the electrical lines. And so that it's possible that Pepco may say that that falls within the, and I forget the term they used, but essentially the space within someone other than Pepco cannot actually maintain the street light, which is a big question and really goes to the heart of what the ongoing costs will be for ownership of the street lights.
I mean,
Mr.
I
Lapp
think
said
that
Mr. Lapp
question
said that's
was
something we should
resolved.
bring up.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Lapp said we should bring that up. That's one of the things I listed for him as to whether we should bring that up to them. And
Yeah, that's a really good question for staff. We did address that in the 2007 legislation, because there had been a provision in the High Voltage Line Act that said nobody except the electric utility can come within 10 feet of a high voltage line. And we struck that, and we said that a municipality maintaining their streetlights can't, that doesn't apply to a municipality maintaining their streetlights, and whether that's, a municipal employee or a contractor hired by a municipality, that is pretty clearly addressed in that 2007 law. And that part was not in dispute with the OAG or anything, but
could you then circulate that specific language around to us so that we have that? But that, at least as of our conversation with PSC staff week before last, that was apparently still a question that was up in the air. And then
yes, I can circulate that.
Okay, the second thing I wanted to just clarify, if I was hearing Dan Sinyahi correctly, the current tariff only anticipates a municipality or county purchasing high pressure sodium streetlights that they can then subsequently convert to LED once they own them. The tariff
Correct.
does not currently anticipate purchase of LED streetlights.
Correct.
And why that may be critical is also in our conversation with PSC staff, they mentioned that they're anticipating Pepco is going to be refiling their system-wide conversion case next spring. And so if that is the case for any of us who have not moved forward by then on purchase of our current high pressure sodium streetlights, that may be a blockade that Pepco may try to put up if they've already either refiled that case or gotten it approved by the PSC. So I'm wondering if that is also something that we should be including in our comments right now, that the tariff should also anticipate purchase of LED streetlights, be they already converted, i.e. Tacoma Park and Martin's Additions, or if some of us don't get into a position to actually purchase our streetlights until after Pepco refiles their system-wide conversion tariff case. Well, rate case, not tariff case, rate case. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Virginia and David had questions. Virginia, go, please proceed.
Virginia, you're muted.
Lost my screen for a second. Hey, I guess my question really is in terms of strategy. Washington Grove has already sent comments, and we'll commingle among ourselves to see whether or not we should send somebody on June 1st. June 15th, though I will not be in the country. But in terms of our strategy going forward, should we start talking? We might be Alberto Zegata. Should we start this discussion about purchasing the lights now? Or should we wait to see what happens with this tariff? How might, if we want to go forward with this discussion, obviously we'd be documenting as much as possible our discussion and what's happening and so on and so forth. Just we're a small municipality, but we're very, obviously there's a lot of interest in our group to move forward on purchasing our lights. What do you all kind of recommend?
My advice is don't wait, go ahead and initiate those discussions. And we want to sort of generate a record or a paper trail of what Pepco's behavior is when they are presented with a request to purchase the lights. That in Chevy Chase view, the response from Pepco was, sure, but you got to pay us this money so we can hire a third-party consultant to tell you where the lights are and what condition they're in and whether we need to do make-ready work. And the more of that sort of evidence we can gather, that will be very important information to share with the Public Service Commission or with the General Assembly, should the bill come back.
Okay.
And maybe just maybe, Pepco will start cooperating. They don't want, if a single municipality has a success, then that might be replicated. So they don't want there to be a, example. So I think who had their hand up? Was it David?
Yeah. On Shayna's question, the pending tariffs that they filed specifically allow for customer maintenance, so that it would seem that they have conceded that the customers can work in the area. Obviously, you want people who have the right technical certifications and so on. And I believe when we were discussing the legislation, there was a comment that actually the contractors people are generally have more certification than Pepco's people.
I can speak to our experience with the two demonstration LED lights that we're putting in next week. Fingers crossed. They're in my garage. Anyway.
Do you own them or does the Pepco own them?
We own them.
Oh, so you're going to do customer-owned lights?
Yes, we are.
How many?
Well, we're doing a demonstration too to see if we like them.
Nice.
So I had lighting maintenance come out and give me a price to install the lights. And I pointed out that we have very narrow streets like Washington Grove. And so the guy decided after he gave me the price to come out and take a look. And he went, oh, these are Pepco on poles. We can't work on them. Once you get the light up, we can maintain the light, but we can't work on Pepco poles. Pepco has to do that. Or you have to have a, quote, work with order, which means you have to hire Pepco to work with them at the same time that they come and coordinate them. And of course, that would be even more money. But their price for installing the two lights was, I think, $1,400 and change for two, whereas Pepco's they're charging us the HPS CIAC, contribution in native construction charge of, well, it comes to $3,508 for two, as opposed to $1,471 for two by the private sector. So all those comments in the current tariff that say reasonable costs are vague and unconvincing to me. What does reasonable mean?
That's a really good question. Okay, any other questions or discussion? So Shayna, you're going to reach out to Rockville and Gaithersburg to try to I guess, bring them up to speed, try to gauge their level of interest on this. We have this recorded, so if there's anybody who was not able to participate and wants to listen in, we can make the recording available. I will not post it generally to the world, but it'll be available upon request to whoever wants it. So I'll share it with this group if anybody wants to replay it. And sounds like PGCMA is going to communicate with the Montgomery chapter and hopefully file comments. And I would say, yeah, to the extent anybody gets anything from the PSC staff that would be helpful to other parties, please share it with the others. We are stronger together when we work together. Just like in 2007, we can be successful on something like this. So I'm very optimistic about that. And I've been, since the session ended, I've been contacted by a number of companies who are very interested in making this market succeed and working with municipalities. So you all may be contacted by some of these companies who've done this work in other states, and they have ways to finance the purchase of the lights and have that paid back over time with the energy savings. And they want to help, get the PSC to fix this tariff and to get the legislation passed next year. So I think we're getting more and more allies who want to help us succeed on this. So with that, I thank you very, very much for participating. And if you have any questions for me, you know how to find me. Please email me. My chief of staff is David Hondowitz. He's on the call as well. We will get you any answers or assistance that we can provide to you, and help in any other way. So I'm going to plan to attend that meeting in June at the Public Service Commission in Baltimore, if I'm able to, so I can speak to the legislative remarks. So thanks again, and that concludes the meeting.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you. Have a good day,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, David.